Recording progress.
First thing I would like to do as co-chairman, I would like to go ahead and point out something that's been a question here for a while, and it goes back to when we first started. Clear back 277-022-022, authorizing creation of the Winnebago County ARPA strategy and outcome commission. And I would like to go down to line 33, and this will resolve on who can vote and who can't on this commission. Be it further resolved by the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors that ARPA strategy outcome commission will consist of the county executive, county board chair or designee, chair of personal and finance, 3 additional county board supervisors elected by the county board chair, director of finance who will serve as a non-voting staff person, and 3 members of the public selected by the county executive, with all appointments subject to the county board confirmation. And all of these have been done. At this time, I'd like to go around and have each one of them introduce themselves, because we will have new people that are also in the room tonight that will introduce themselves. So,
Good afternoon, Chuck Parry, I represent District 31 County. I'm vice chair of the county board and appointed to this commission.
Orchard, District 3, that's on the north side.
Good afternoon, Andy Buck, County Board Supervisor, District 24, town of Algoma and part of the city of Oshkosh on the west side.
Tim Galloway, resident of Neenah and representing the community.
we'll just have the voting members first, please.
Tom Belter, I'm a member of the public committee too.
Beth Oswald, member of the public.
John Daniel, County Executive. Morris Cox. I'm District of 27, which is north in the town of village of Fox Crossings. And I'm the chairman of the BNF for Personnel and Finance Committee.
And I'm Tom Egan, and I'm chairman of the county board. And I will go around that didn't get to introduce themselves. Paul.
Paul Kaiser, finance director.
Sue Wertmer, county clerk.
Mary Ann Miller, Corporation Counsel.
Ethan Hollenberger, County Executive Assistant.
Okay, and everyone else, we welcome you, and that kind of gives you an overview. So you know who are the voting members and who will take part in this. So we do have county board members, we have sheriff, we have sheriff's department, we have all kinds of people here that are interested in what's going on. So that's the first thing I would like to do. The next thing on the agenda would be the public comments. Anyone from the public would go ahead and speak at this meeting. Supervisor Isaac.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The minutes of the October 26, 2022 meeting does not reflect the glitch in the Zoom video recording, which failed to record at least the first 10 minutes of the meeting. Failure to record resulted in the testimony of Supervisor Paul Eisen, District 4, not being recorded. However, being prudent, I shall read the testimony into the record today. On Tuesday, September 27, 2022, Winnebago County ARPA Commission met and approved 7-2 vote the administration decision to allocate all $33 million of ARPA funds to replace lost revenue using Parkview Health Center and the Highway Department as their basis for allocation. This is a simple rationale given to the federal government potential auditors under the ARPA rules. Director of Administration went on to describe special fund set aside using ARPA funds, the distribution of approved projects at the county's own speed and time. He also distributed a 3-page list of department asks for which money is requested. One thing's clear to me, that while lost revenue is one class of loss for which funds may be allocated, it's purely a legal fiction when contrasted to over 4,000 projects for which NACO reports money used by municipalities over 250,000 population. $33 million loss of revenue for Winnebago County, patently excessive. Dane County claimed $20 million loss of revenue from an allocation of $106 million. Milwaukee claimed $4.5 million loss of revenue from an allocation of $183 million. Cook County, Illinois claimed loss of $50 million of revenue from an allocation of $1 billion. My contention is that Winnebago County would be better served by identifying individual projects, allocating funds for those projects, and doing the hard work of reporting them to the federal government as the intent of the government mandate that they be allocated by 2023, spent by 2024. We can easily meet those plan requirements. And if we have to hire a specialist to help us, I'm sure he or she will be payable with ARPA funds. Why do we need to complicate the situation? Put off using the funds, subject ourselves to scrutiny, gaming the system. There's no way for Winnebago County, Wisconsin to do that.
Is there anyone else from the public that would speak at this time? Better comment.
And I come to you as a citizen, not as the sheriff, but I am concerned about the $33+ million. This is generational debt. No one in this room is going to pay it off. Our kids won't pay it off. Our grandkids won't pay it off. We need to be very judicious about how we spend this money. For those of you that, I'm sure all of you are aware of inflation, the rise in gas prices, the doubling of interest rates, the slowing of net new construction, which is where we get the additional money to fund the county. So I ask that serious consideration be given to fund CIP projects and begin to pay off our old debt without taking new debt on as we move forward and spend this money. It is a way to set ourselves up, our county up, to weather the financial storm, which I think is headed our way. Thank you.
Anyone else? State your name and address, please.
Hi, Jim Edmonds on Kokana, Wisconsin, from the public. I also serve as president of a nonprofit board that manages a property on the northern side of Winnebago County. This is on Midway Road, just across from UW, Wisconsin. On that property resides United Way of Fox Cities, 11 Community Clothes Closet, St. Joseph's Food Pantry. This property was donated with free land to these agencies to build their facilities approximately 18 years ago by a nonprofit foundation, Mercy Works Foundation. We have some undeveloped land there. And my mission as a board president that manages the property for those condominium owners, that's how we're set up, is to help develop this land to bring more nonprofit agencies onto the properties to support the human services needs in both Outagamie and Winnebago County. It's a big service area. We've identified at least 6 significant nonprofit agencies. We met with them. We've identified their needs. Some of them are common needs, such as training rooms and the like, where the mission ultimately is to help build a facility or maybe multiple facilities, hopefully one large one, that can serve the needs of these agencies and have shared resources. Thus, my objective today is to get on the radar in some fashion to see if the ARPA funds can help support this mission. To that end, I have some information about who these agencies are. I didn't know how large your committee was, but I'll leave this with Tom. For those that are interested, they can look at this, and there's a summary of all these different agencies. It's a monumental task that my nonprofit board is taking on to bring these agencies together. There's only one agency in the six that may have some funds to start the process, but not to complete it. And thus all these other smaller agencies that are significant human service agencies will have to do a lot of fundraising in order to make this a reality. We get a facility built that has the proper amenities and the like that serves all those purposes. So there's going to be fundraising for sure. ARPA funds may be part of the process to get us there.
Thank you. Anyone else looking to speak to the board or commission? Yes.
So speaking as a community member, Beth Oswald, I'm Black Wolf resident. I agree with what John is saying. And it feels like this commission started later than I think everybody wanted it to. But I respectfully disagree with some of the county board supervisors' comments that we should continue rushing through this. So I think it is smart to move the money, to be thoughtful, to make sure we're spending the money as it's needed in our communities. I appreciate Supervisor Buck saying something in the last board meeting that we're working on this, and I appreciate you when Mr. Skellinger, who I will reach out to personally because I was taken aback by his comments talking about this being a dysfunctional committee, I think, or commission, because I think everybody's worked really well together. But I think comments like that just inflame this feeling of lack of transparency when these meetings are recorded. People can watch. Obviously, he hasn't been watching these meetings or the comments, so I appreciate when supervisors make sure to say something to other supervisors when they exaggerate on some of the issues. So.
Anyone else wishing to speak before the board today or commission? Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom wishing to speak?
Yes, my name is Nancy Jones. I live in Appleton. I am tracking your process for a number of nonprofit organizations that operate in the Tri-County area. And I don't have a comment as much as an appeal to please share your meeting packets. There's been many meetings where you're referring to hard copies of materials that are passed out at the table, but they're not screen shared and they're not posted on the website. So we want to, this is an important process and a unique one. And we're very interested in following it, but it's been tricky because we don't have access to all the materials that you're looking at. We're specifically interested in seeing, at least at some prior meetings, there was talk about an a potential application for community groups and a process that accompanied that. So those are the kind, and I saw on the agenda today, there's a resolution, but I could not find it on your website. So please try I would really appreciate it if we could be more informed observers and residents. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom wishing to speak to the commission or board today?
I do, Tom.
Mr. Bender.
I'd just like to say that, I'm not 100% sure that the way we did that won't come back to us in the future. And they're going to tell us that we didn't basically do it the proper way of doing the documentation and following the ARPA guidelines. And I personally am not going to vote for any capital improvement projects until we basically fill the projects that we have that are ARPA that would qualify. The land and water, $3.5 million, that qualifies. The Walkout Dam would qualify. The Expo Center with the retention ponds, that would qualify. And we could have maybe taken $10 or $15 million for lost revenue. I don't believe the $33 million was right to go that way. And as far as the radios for the sheriff's department for $2.6 million, I won't vote for that when that comes to the floor. I don't believe that's ARPA project. That's a capital improvement project. And in 2021, we only borrowed $4 million. Normally we borrow 10 and we paid that back in 1 year. Last year we borrowed $6 million. So over the course of the last 2 years, normally we would have borrowed $20 million and we only basically have $6 million in debt. So we could easily borrow a little more this year if we need to basically exceed the $10 million. But I don't want to take a chance spending this money and then the ARPA auditors coming back and saying we didn't follow the guidelines. And yes, you stretch the guidelines and now these projects aren't going to be funded because you didn't follow the guidelines. So I would like to see the ARPA committee push the projects that follow the guidelines first. And then when you have extra money that we can't account for, we should have taken that for the lost revenue, and that we can fund projects with that are actual capital improvement projects. I can remember the county exec telling me that these are supposed to be legacy projects because his children are going to be paying for it for the next 50 years. Well, the radios only have a 10-year life expectancy. The county board chairman or the county executive won't even, his children won't be out of high school and them radios will be obsolete. 10 years ago, we spent $10 million on them radios. That's $1 million a year. And now we're going to replace them all again. I don't believe that the highway department, the parks, the facilities, the airport needs $6,000 a piece radios. They're more than capable of using the radios they have. Yes, they don't have updates, but I also looked, the village of Winnebago found radios for $3,000 that basically are updated more than 10 years. So I think we need to look at the system that we're using and see if there's a better or more reasonable way of doing it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else on Zoom wish to speak before the commissioner board? Anyone else? Not seeing any, we'll close that part of the agenda. Next thing is reconsideration approval of minutes of 11/30/2022 meeting.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded for the reconsideration, the approval of minutes.
Mr. Chair,
11/30/2022.
the motion needs to be made by person on the prevailing side. So the county executive voted on the losing side.
Right.
I authored this and brought it forward at my request, so I move for approval of reconsideration of the minutes from 11/30/2022.
Second.
And seconded. Any discussion? Yes.
Chairman Egan, I have reviewed the minutes. I've re-listened to the tape numerous times. And there is no doubt in my mind that the vote to spend money was not within the scope of the agenda. If we look at the November 30th, 2022 agenda, it specifically said discussion and possible action regarding process to solicit and collect requests for community projects. There's nothing about disbursement. It's about regarding process to solicit and request. And I would also note when I was going through the tapes, there was reference at one point at 1:07:07 to the fact that one of the members said, not sure we have an agenda item to vote on. I absolutely understand when people are in the thick of things, there can be confusion. But my legal opinion is that since you did not have on the agenda anything regarding disbursement, but rather collecting and soliciting, discussions regarding and decisions made and votes made regarding disbursements is out of order and would be an open meetings violation. Just so you have that.
My motion to reconsider the minutes certainly incorporates your disposition and does not disagree with it. That is not the intent.
Okay.
The intent is to approve the body of the minutes in general.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we were
We'll have,
very clear.
when we get into the next minutes, I'll have a little more detail on these issues, but I really think that I erred when I voted to not approve them. And I asked the committee to reconsider and put it on the table again, so I can vote on this again. I will certainly vote this time to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second for the reconsideration? Or we can have seconded it. Any more the discussion? Any more discussion? Any more discussion? At this time, we're gonna start doing something different, so we all know who voted in favor and who isn't. We're gonna go around and have the clerk go ahead and ask for the roll call, please.
Okay. Vice Barry,
Yes. For approval, yes.
Vice Porcher,
Yes.
Supervisor.
Aye.
Buck, motion.
Aye.
You're not voting on certainly.
Aye.
This is to approve the November minutes.
Just a motion to bring them.
Okay, aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Right.
that is passed unanimously. Number 3, approval of minutes of 12/14 of 2022 meeting.
Make a motion.
Second. Made and seconded for the approval of 12/14/2022. Any discussion?
Yes, sir. The minutes we just approved from the 11/30/2022 meeting. And if you look at. It was agenda item 3, and that was discussion of possible action regarding the process to solicit and collect requests for community projects. Within that category, I move to allocate funding equally to each municipality. That was the intent. I won't get into the motion, that kind of stuff, but the intent was clearly there, it was approved, etc. Now that has been set aside by Corporation Council because it wasn't technically correct. However, when we get into the minutes from, bear with me, here, 12/24, we got into a discussion about how we're going to look at funding for different projects. And during that process, we approved a form to be used to submit projects for funding. And I should have noted here, bear with me a minute.
Can we just stick to the approval of the 12/14 minutes, please, and then we can come on your other one if you want, but right now it's just asked for the approval of minutes of 12/14. That's all that's on down here.
Yes, that's what I'm discussing.
Okay,
I'm
you said 12/24, yeah.
I'm sorry, 12/14. In that area, and let me define it, we approved a process by which we would accept requests for funding using that submittal form criteria. And I was the one that moved to approve that process specific to a certain category within this document, which we have right here. There was also a second motion introduced by the chairman that added the category of community projects through county functions. That lists town municipalities are part of that category. So in other words, when I voted for this at the this last meeting, I was being a little hypocritical, and I would ask all of us to consider that, because the intent at the previous meeting and the minutes was to do it by municipality equal. If we're going to require the municipalities now to submit it by form on projects, they contradict each other. And I did vote yes on the second one, but I don't know how we want to address this, Mr. Chairman, but obviously I was certainly in error on that second vote, because I would be a hypocrite if I voted against myself. Does everyone understand what I'm trying to explain?
Thank you.
Okay. What's your suggestions, Mr. Chairman?
I know what you're talking about is how this got going, and I think here again, like you said, a flare up come up, and we're all in a rage here, what should be done and this and that. And I think, matter of fact, we had two motions on the floor at once, if I remember right.
Yes, correct.
And which shouldn't have been, so, and I think that's one of the reasons that even that first one wasn't, approved is because there again, I think we have two motions on the floor, because I think that some did approve it and then the second motion come in. But going back to them 12-14, the only way it could be as of right now, done is whether we approve with what's written, because you gotta go with what's written. And whoever the clerk or secretary or whatever, that's what's ever on black and white paper there, so either approve with the way that it is, or it's null and void.
Yeah, I can't offer amendment to, correct the motion that was approved, so that's the last. Obviously, I would have to.
Corporate counsel.
Just for clarification, because I'm looking at the 12-14 minutes. Do you have the actual draft application so everybody could see what you're referencing?
It is available. I believe.
Right,
What are you talking about? You talking about the agenda?
they were just talking about, I believe, an application form, is that correct?
I don't have it. It's an application form that was drafted by the general.
Yes, I brought it in.
Here it is.
Have it somewhere. It's right here.
So is
That's
this
it,
the
that's
form
it.
you were, sir?
Yes, we got it right.
This was it? Okay. So can you just rewind and say what you want to do with this, or what had been decided?
That application, and based on my motion, which is identified in the minutes as number 3. A motion by Farley, seconded by Galloway, to use this application for external community projects.
Mhm.
However, the contradiction from the meeting before is that I had moved to distribute it equally without a submittal of that application. The only way to correct this would be to pretty much negate the second motion made by Chairman Egan, because that included, and I don't know if that was intent, community projects through county functions. So that seems to be a bit of a dilemma. In other words, municipalities now, and I'm talking primarily about the 22 municipalities within this county, would have to submit a project request using that application.
Can you make a motion to amend that motion and strike that second part?
I'll leave that up to John.
The issue is, though, it says in the minutes that the motion carried with all voting in favor.
Yes,
So it's a
correct.
done deal.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Obviously, I will speak for myself.
No,
I voted incorrectly, so rather than move to. I wouldn't be proper to move to reconsider these at a later date, but I obviously cannot support the minutes. Simply to correct my own error.
Yes.
And I think, point of clarification on in November, the vote, what I heard the vote was saying is we are taking the 22 municipalities would each just get a check for 136,000 without requiring an application.
Correct.
That's what I voted against. And then when we discussed the application on December 14th, I did not think of municipalities as these projects, because I thought that was already determined that the municipalities would each get their 136,000. So when we were voting on that application, I was thinking it was things outside of the municipalities, but then it came around again that the municipalities would have to apply for this. So that's where I was very confused on exactly what we were voting on. And I was good with the application, thinking it was outside
I think we
the
all
municipalities.
application, that's what I am.
Sure.
I have something that has to do with Supervisor Cox. I have something that has to do with item 5 on the minute.
Do we?
Can I get rid of the-
Let's take care of one issue at a time.
I don't think so.
You have a resolution, corporate council for this?
What I am looking at just is that perhaps the way to resolve it. Because it seems like the first, Tom Belter distributed a copy of the draft application for community project. Fine, right? Motion by Fari, seconded by Galloway to use this application for external community projects. No problem with that. Correct? Okay. Then motion carried. Again, not a problem. With all voting in favor. The problem is motion by Egan, seconded by Buck to also use this application form for community projects through county functions, correct? That's the issue. That's second sentence. I would say you could take care of that piece in the future via resolution. So in other words, vote. Again, however you decide to vote for approval of the minutes for December 14th, with the exception of the last 2 lines, which could be taken care of via resolution in the future. That's a thought. Because it seems like everybody is in agreement that under number 3, everything is accurate, but for the last 2 sentences. And so I think perhaps the cleanest way is if all are in favor, voting for it, with the exception of the last 2 sentences, and then it can get cleaned up in the future.
You have to get Mr. Egan to back that.
I will so move. I will second. Thank you.
So that's.
So then
We got it turned.
the minutes are approved for the December 4th.
With the
It's asked to
exception
know-
further stated.
Okay.
They still haven't approved the November one, but they're still on the table, right?
We approved that.
Well, then you,
To reconsider
yeah, you did a motion to reconsider. You need a motion to approve
those minutes.
as well.
Yeah.
So,
With the exception.
but that's December, we're still back.
Now we're in November.
Consider with the exception of the motion to approve.
December 14th minutes.
Right, but the November 14th minutes still.
30th.
Or November
Would it be easier for us to just get through this and approve these minutes and then go back
go
and
back?
approve the?
Sure, that's
All
fine.
right.
Okay, so.
Let's make clear the dates.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we are still talking about December 14th right now.
so now we're on, okay.
So we have a motion to remove the last 2 lines of that item, correct?
Item number 3.
Right, approve the minutes with the exception of the last 2 lines.
Identified as number 3.
Right, okay.
All right, Morris, before we approve the minutes, is there something else that you want to talk about? Thank you, on December 14th. Thank you, sir. I would like to get to item 5. December 14th minutes. In that, I am certain, in reading it through, that I did not vote for, I voted against with Mr. Belter. There were 2 votes. I did, I believe.
That's simply correct.
So it's a simple correction. It was just, I did not vote for that particular line item. Okay? So that'll be changed to 7 to 2.
That was item, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Item number
Item
5
Item number.
is Belter and Cox voting against.
So we are through 12-14 now. You better all.
And so do you approve? You have to have a vote to approve as amended or as,
Right.
So 7-2 and the other two lines gone.
and you can do a roll call, right?
Right. We have to have a motion to go ahead and have it done. Need a motion to go ahead, the approval with corrections for the 12-14 meeting.
I thought you did.
You did that.
Yeah.
That was already moved, right?
So, I know, but we had another correction there.
What's the other correction?
You already made it.
Okay, I thought somebody did another real quick. Okay.
I'll move to approve the minutes as amended and explained in detail specific to item 3.
We had a motion already. We're
And a motion from Tom, but Tom is saying because we have another
You
change,
changed.
we needed to vote.
We had a motion from Tom to accept that
Against.
last two lines.
Yes.
Mhm.
And that was approved.
That was,
Right.
well, that wasn't approved yet. It was a motion. It didn't get voted on yet.
We didn't vote on.
No,
it.
no, and then you
So,
added
go
your-
around with the vote.
Right.
Can we do it all in a voice vote?
No. We're gonna go ahead and roll call. I don't want somebody coming back and say I didn't
Okay,
do that.
do it, do it.
Are we,
Withdraw his motion and then make a new motion.
Well, yeah.
to do both corrections? with
Yeah.
one
His
vote?
his motion is proper.
Yeah, Tom, do you mind withdrawing your, and then making a new motion to include all the.
Have we got them all now? There's nothing else?
So,
I will make a motion. Go ahead. Draw the two corrections and approve all corrections that on for 12-14-2022's meeting.
second,
Roll call, please.
No. Sorry,
All right.
Aye.
I,
aye.
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 I,
Aye. Thank you. And we have to go back up to 11:30. Approve that. We did the reconsideration. Now we have to make a motion to approve the minutes for 11/30/2022. We're kind of jumping around, but we're getting all this straightened out now.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
Second. Motion made and second for the approval of the minutes from 11/30/2022. Any discussion? Not hearing any roll call.
Barry?
Aye.
I,
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Thank you.
that's nine.
Pardon?
That was nine.
Okay, comments from co-chairman, county executive, is there anything you'd like to?
Yeah, there's a few. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here and want to thank the county board for giving us the opportunity to revisit the Spirit Fund and everything that we've done thus far. To be very clear, the motion appropriation to already claim the revenue replacement has already been done. To be very clear, the authority to just leave that in the general fund of Parkview is already there. I do not wish to do that. So I'm gonna take some responsibility on potentially, as you said, rushing the ARPA process. I think I put my staff in a poor spot to actually staff this committee. Director Collard was in the midst of training a new finance director and finding a new finance director amongst wage study and many other high-level projects going on through the county. Staff was not ready. The board really wanted to go on it, so I think I rushed them a little bit earlier. I should have stood my ground and said, we're not ready for the meetings. So I'll take responsibility on that. But moving forward, I'm going to be adding staff to this commission. So we are going to have more staff here to help with some of the works, to help show some of our homework that we've been doing. I've been working with a couple of staff members from public health that are going to help us out with strategies. And different things, how to do block grants, other ways for us to actually go through this process, which we will go through later on when we talk about, a timeline that we have, which will be item 7 here. And when we do get the staff here, I'm gonna ask everybody to please let the staff us. If we have questions, go through the staff. Let us do the homework for you, let us find some numbers for you, let us do some digging for you to kind of clear up some of the things that have gone on. And I promised everybody and to promise the community as a whole that I'm gonna do a better job of showing my homework. I think that maybe we rushed through the process, even though I still stand behind the decisions that we made. And there's some adjustments I think we have time to make. Again, if we don't create a separate fund, our job here is done. And that is not the intent I want to do going forward. But I also ask everybody in this commission to trust the committee, that at these tables that we can fight and holler as much as we want to for our beliefs and our ideals. And we're not always going to agree, and that's just fine. But when this committee does make a decision, that we trust that committee's decision, and that we try to do our best to support that position. And that is just something that I would ask of. I think our staff's credibility has been called under the carpet. That doesn't sit well with me. Doesn't sit well with me that we have called the credibility of Director Collard under question. That doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't sit well with me that we called even our new finance director, who is a CPA, under question. That doesn't sit well with me. I trust my staff, and I think they're very well versed in what's going on, and this is all new for everyone. But we have a lot of work to do because there are a lot of needs coming up. And I'm just going to list one of them, for instance, before I end my comments. That in March, the extra food allocations for people that were distributed through the pandemic are going away. Are going away to the tune of $2 million annually to 25,000 residents in Winnebago County. Now, I have already been working with Human Services to see how we can come and support our food pantries in the area. In Neenah, in Menasha, in Oshkosh, and in Winnebago and Amro, to make sure they have the support they need. Oshkosh alone is spending over $3,500 per week on eggs. Just eggs per week. So even though some communities may have jumped all over ARPA and claimed the allotted revenue replacement at the time and approved their projects for boardwalks and other things, I think Winnebago County did the right thing by showing some restraint and holding on to see what else the storm is going to bring us. And in March, we're about to find out. We're about to find out when $2 million of food allocation goes away from 25,000 residents in our county. And I'm actually happy that we're in the position that we are to have the resistance that we did. So we're in the right opportunity with the money to actually help our citizens the best we can. And I would also disagree that the land and water was an appropriate allocation of ARPA, because it was not. It would have had to have been spent by 2026, allocated by 2024. By having the way that we are doing it, we are allowing a land and water conservation program to go on for many years in the future, decades, to make an actual impact on our waterways here in Winnebago County. Something no other county that I'm aware of in Wisconsin has done. Now, that is a project that I do wish to get through our county board, as well as some of these other projects that we have going on. But if we don't take a time to step back and have these meetings and show our homework, which I'm promising to do a better job of, we're not going to have a shot at any of that. So I thank everybody for having this, and I hope we listen to Paul as he gives his presentation to show how he came up to some of these conclusions, and that we wait until the February 23rd ARPA commission, where we're really going to dig into the nuts and bolts on this. give my staff the time to put these presentations together, not only for this commission, but for the general public. Give us time to make sure that when we have applications that we're gonna discuss at this, that we can actually get it posted to our website for the public to see. And as much as I admit that I didn't put my staff in a good position, that I kind of rushed them through them, I'm going to guarantee you, if I need to say no and we need to make sure we get it right, I'm gonna listen to them. I'm gonna do my job as being a better boss for them. And those are my comments. Thank you.
I guess the only thing I have, and I think you probably just did it wrong, is that you were going to bring more people to the commission. I mean, you're gonna bring them more to speak, not add to the commission.
Correct.
Thank you.
Staff, more resources for us as a commission to help.
Mr. Parry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the food pantries, $2 million. How are they currently funded?
Uncertain. I would guess, yeah.
I can help answer
you.
that. That's really, they're nonprofits, so they're funded through charitable donations, United Ways. But primarily, there's a little bit of federal funding, which is a piece of what John was talking about, but
So that part of their funding is fine.
no, it's not on the food pantries, it's on the recipients. The recipients, so for example, a senior citizen would typically get $23 worth of SNAP or food
SNAP.
stamps.
Familiar with that, yeah.
And through this emergency, that was elevated to $300 a month. So at the end of March, when that goes away, a senior who was getting 300 would only, they'd go back to 23 a month, which the ripple effect is, unfortunately, they're spending that at our area grocery stores. So that's also going to affect the economy in this area, because now the grocery stores are going to lose that $2.5 million worth of revenue each.
Which has a diminished value, obviously, i.e. the case would be for eggs.
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
With the gal that called in about agendas and all that, I was looking for these meetings as they were scheduled and along with the agendas on the website. Now, I could not find any. Is that because I don't know how to look or they weren't posted
The minutes weren't posted.
with the meetings?
Yes, I reviewed today and I actually called the clerk's office to get them.
Okay, because that's one of the ways, educating our public to look at the website to see what's scheduled and what's going on, and then you can make your pretty drawings and everything else attached to it, I think. When I was looking 2 or 3 days ago, I did not see the meetings posted yet.
They weren't.
So I mean, that's a big thing, going back to basics. Give the public the information so that they can, and we can also then determine what we're gonna be talking about. We can prepare.
I'm sorry, they posted them a week in advance to the agenda date. So they will, Cassie will put them out on the agenda. Well, Sue will put them out on the agenda, or the agenda out on the calendar. A week in advance to the actual date that it's to be,
And what are the agendas do?
so.
Well, if we get them a week before, that's when we like to put them out, as like Morris is saying, the week before. So
They don't make a load of agendas and just post them willy-nilly.
But I guess when I looked, I didn't see squat out of there if we even having a meeting. And
well,
if we-
sometimes we don't get them a week.
Well,
So
that's what we have to.
Wait a second. Ethan sent these out via the email system. And made sure that we knew that these were going to be in advance, so you can set your calendars up. And then as these come up, these dates come up a week earlier, the agenda is posted on the calendar.
In a county board rule.
Yeah, and I'm just
Yeah, that's
saying,
my rule.
you have to educate your consumer of what you're doing. So now you tell them that, and now they know and they know where to look.
If I could respond, I completely agree with you. That's why I went to find other staff, why I went to find staff in the health department that could help us out with this. Why I brought my assistant in, why we wanted to have more. I was asking a gentleman who was trying to find and train a finance director as he is trying to train an HR director, as he was trying to do a whole bunch of other stuff, high level behind the scene that I am not smart enough to deal with, to also clerk this commission. That was an error on my part. And he was originally on there. Yep. And I know you're not trying to point, but I agree with you that that is why we're doing this and why I wanted the February 6th meeting. I didn't want to do a February 6th meeting. Me and Tom talked about it as co-chairs. We were talking about the 23rd, and then we sat down and we negotiated and we agreed. How about we do a meeting, an ARPA commission on the 6th to say we need a reset, to show that timeline of the reset, what we're going to do, how we're going to re-envision this thing, what we're going to go forward on. And that's how we got here. Plan of action. That's right.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate you bringing on more staff. I think that's critical. Let's make sure to use other resources in the community. I think the Oshkosh Community Foundation has seen every single charitable application from Amro and Winnebago and Oshkosh and even Menasha. Amy would be happy to help as needed to help vet some of these outside applications. Not the ones from the county, but from the nonprofits. So.
Can I make one comment?
Yep.
I think the county clerk's office is the one that's responsible for getting these meetings posted. And I think the breakdown of what you were saying, Tom, is we don't get them a week before the meeting. So we can't get them out there. Now, the woman that spoke earlier, she's been in touch with our office. We communicate with the public when they call looking for this. But until we get the materials, we can't post them. So I think before you start adding more people to the mix to try to get us stuff, too many cooks in the kitchen can cause a problem too. I think you need to streamline getting those materials to us so we can get them posted in a timely manner. That would just be my suggestion.
We will.
Okay.
Yep.
Because like, I'm not sure, but I don't think Paul's will be up on the screen so they can see it today.
It will be. I'll share it.
Okay, good. So.
And the minute discussion was shared, so they were, as you were just discussing the minutes, anybody at home saw that. So I have been sharing my screen when something relevant.
Good. The only comment I have is just like the county executive said, I want to thank you, as you both, or I should say, all of you know, we ended up with a setback that did not get passed by the county board. So anything that we've already decided that we want to go ahead and appropriate the money for, it was cut right off. Then we didn't even try to because it, the spirit fund wasn't made. So it was just done and over with, and so we got to start right over, kind of from start all right over. And so that's why we're here today. Tom?
I'm mildly confused, although we'll have more discussion about this. When we talked about the water projects, it is an extended period of spending. And that was why we moved ARPA money into a spirit fund so we could accommodate those things. Similarly, food pantry would be an extended period of spending, unless you want to do a fiscal cliff in 2 years and pull 2 million back out of their budget. So they're both extended periods of spending. So you seem to say that you wanted to get it all spent within the deadlines, within the timelines of the original ARPA rules, which is kind of what my complaint was way long ago when we talked about the spirit fund. So now you want to go back following the ARPA rules and not schedule anything that involves extended spending that should be dealt with county budget and county discussions in the future. But we'll have more discussion about this. So.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying.
Yes, Morris.
We've talked to building a way and making some of these funds go into something of a grant that we can allocate. When you get to that point, will that help extending the funds beyond the 2026?
Absolutely. That was the point of creating a separate fund, because we would no longer be chained to the allocate by 2024 and spend by 2026. Without that being removed, the land and water doesn't work.
Right.
There's no way we can get that accomplished in 2 years. Not a chance.
I heard
We, we will get into it, and I don't want to get too far ahead of it, because there's a lot of education that's gonna happen on the 23rd. There are a lot of other examples of other communities, plenty of them that have done that. For one, because I don't want to take too much of the thunder, the neighborhood improvement grant was made possible by a block grant the state of Wisconsin did after they used revenue replacement. That is how that grant got to us. That is how they are making that work for us. So we're gonna look at some of these things that they did, and I'm not trying to get ahead of my staff. That's what we're going to explain on the 23rd. We're gonna go through the timeline of this. Today is all about backing up, and I know later on here, we're gonna talk about the resolution that originally got us here. And then Paul has a presentation on the revenue replacement that he wants to go with the video he found that was great. I wish I saw that video and we would played it a long time ago. I know Paul yelled at me. Are we good recording? All right. Paul yelled at me for using the term lost revenue. He told me to take that out of my mouth, and I will listen to the CPA in the room because he is a smarter man than I. That's why you'll never hear me say the words lost revenue again.
He's still saying that's twice.
I know, right? Well, he's not going to say it. So,
Might apply to many.
right.
Okay, anything else? Otherwise, I'm gonna let Paul go, I think, and let him give his presentation.
Well, item 5. Do we need to discuss that since you kind of already went over that?
That's why I kind of went over it right away.
Okay.
So everybody knows who can vote. So we'll go right into presentation from the county administration of the acceptable use of the state and local fiscal recovery funds, SLRF, provided by ARPA practices will account for Winnebago County's allocation. Afterwards, we'll have some questions and answers. Paul?
First, I know I met some of you, but not really haven't talked to any individually that much. So just gonna give you a little background on myself. I am from Oshkosh. I grew up here, went to UW Oshkosh. Got my bachelor's and had my master's there. Basically then passed my CPA, so I am still CPA. I am still licensed. I am up to date on my CPA credit. So I basically worked 2 years as an auditor when I first got out of college. Then I went to work for a manufacturing company in Fond du Lac called Well Vehicle Electronics. They make a lot of aftermarket products for places like AutoZone, O'Reilly's, Advance. So I worked there for over 30 years. Went through 3 different buyouts, so I had my share of being bought by private equity groups. Carlyle Group was the big one, the Rank Group was another one. And then the last one that I got bought out by was NGK Spark Plugs, which is Japan. Only good part about that was they actually let me go to Japan in 2016-18. I was supposed to go in 20 and then COVID hit. So that's a little bit about me. I basically was going to retire. And then I said, oh, there's a director of finance job for Winnebago County. Yeah, I'll throw my hat in, see if they want to hire me. Maybe I could do some good for the county. So, well, John and the staff decided to hire me, so here I am. Trying to do good for the county and bring some of my non-government experience to the government. So the government side is the part I need to learn, and Carol is really helping me a lot on that. So basically a few weeks ago, I got thrown kind of into the ARPA thing. I've done a lot of research, done a lot of reading, talked to GFOA, which is, I think most of you know what that is. Government Financial Officers Association. So I'm a member of that. I'm also a member of the WGFOA. I went to a conference there. I did a seminar on grants for about 3 hours to learn a little bit about ARPA. IIJA, which is the new one that's coming up, COVID and CARES, which are kind of past now. So I put together the presentation, which basically the whole thing is to try to, let's bring it all back and reset. Okay, let's start from ground zero. So I know there was a resolution passed and we can get into all that later about, well, the resolution, and I'm gonna leave the board stuff to you guys, because that's out of my expertise. So what I want to do is, right now is reversing what we did before. So we passed the resolution. We did this kind of accounting of general fund and Parkview Fund. And I know there's a whole bunch of discussions around that, and I guess a little miscommunication about what was really happening, but let me get to the presentation. I'll answer all your questions here, or whether you want to come up to my office or give me a phone call later. I'll give you the knowledge I have, which is, well, 2 weeks into this right now, but I'm still learning, and I'm still hoping that you know, this can work. This is for the county. This isn't for me. This isn't for any individual person. This is Winnebago County. So that's what I'm going to try to explain. And I did have a few conversations with Tom earlier this morning with Doug. And I think kind of gave me a little better way of presenting some of this stuff to maybe enhance what I'm trying to tell you. So my whole thing is, we're not going to use 2021 expenses. We're going to use 2022 expenses. There's a whole bunch of stuff behind that. If you want to get into details, I can bore you with that later. I don't know that you all want to know about that right now. It all deals with audits and a bunch of other things. So we're going to look at using 2022 expenses and taking care of it that way. So this is basically, ARPA basically was March is when they came out with it. They passed the bill, they came up with the money. And then in June, they sent the money out to all the municipalities. Nobody knew what to do with it. I got this money, what do I do? You know, they had no ruling, they had no basically guidelines. The US government just said, here's some money. And nobody knew what they could do or what they could not do. So it took till like July 27th, which might be a different slide, but July 27th of 2022 is when they came out with the actual final rule. They had an interim final rule, which the video will talk about a little bit more. But that didn't really tell you, they told you what you could not spend it on. You could not do debt. You could not do a bunch of other things, but didn't tell you exactly what you could use it for. So the final rule came out in July of 2022 and said you can use it for 4 things. One of them being lost revenue. That cover all. So yes, the point there is, we're not trying to be manipulative. We're not trying to be fishy. I mean, I did get a couple letters from citizens in the county about hopefully you bring some integrity to the county and you don't. We're not being fishy. We're not misallocating. We are basically doing what the US Treasury Department told us we can do, which is basically trying to take these funds and use them as expenses so that we can extend the time frame of how we can spend them in our county and not have to go based on the federal time frame or guideline. So they gave us this ruling, which is the final rule. Basically, the last time I'm going to say this, or maybe second last time, lost revenue, which is really government expenses, is what they really said. But the term lost revenue is what everybody heard. But it's really, what are the expenses the government has that you can use ARPA funds for? And that's anywhere from wages to broadband, to highway projects. But the easiest one to do is wages. That's just a quick, this is what it is. So, you want to go to the next one?
I think it's the video. Hold on. Nope.
No, this is basically, what they did is, if I'll get, there's another slide, I think, that there's like a tier 1, a tier 2, and a tier 3, depending on your population size of your county. So if you're in a tier 5, you could just take $10 million about anything, no calculation, no nothing. You just, it's done. It's, and you can use that 10 million any way you want. So that's what Rule 1315 is, and that's part of the final rule is a fact. So they came up with all these facts to try to help and give you more guidance. 1315 seems to be the big one that everybody wants to. So, yes, now the video there. It's 7 minutes. So when they switch to the journal entry part, just stop it. We don't need it to get into habits of credits. Right click and hit play.
I know I have to move it.
Oh, sorry. That's YouTube, so you got a few seconds of an ad.
Oh, I did it already. We got
Oh,
it.
you did it?
Hello and welcome to the second episode of Just a Tad. I'm Michelle Mark Levine and Tad is our GFOA's mini class that's 10 minutes or less on an accounting topic. This episode is about revenue and expenditure recognition for the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, CSLFRF, still quite a mouthful, but a little bit shorter than the full name. We will in this episode quickly classify the CSLFRF grants. We'll review the rules for recognizing grant revenue in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, and on your schedule of expenditures of federal awards, CFA, which is the foundation of a federal fund single audit. We'll explain a frequent source of confusion and then look at some model journal entries and CFA treatment over 2 years because cash receipts, eligible expenditures, and CFA recognition can cross between years. Lots of governments receive CSLFRF, a grant program established by the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, affectionately called ARPA, right? And lots of governments that got this money don't regularly receive a lot of federal funds. And if you don't spend more $750,000 or more of federal funds in a year, you don't have to have a federal fund single audit. But even those governments that get plenty of federal funds, have single audits every year, we're somewhat confused because there was nothing normal about this grant program, right? ARPA was passed in early March of 2021. Cash advances started going to governments as early as June of 2021. And the only thing that we had to guide us was what the U.S. Treasury Department called interim final rules, an oxymoron, right? As well as frequently asked questions, where the questions and the answers seem to change a lot. The final rule came out in January of 2022. So roughly 10 months after the legislation passed and more than 6 months after the cash started flowing. There are 4 kinds of non-exchange transactions, 2 of which are where we would find grants, including intergovernmental grant revenue. Now, because governments were forced to take these ARPA funds, this is a voluntary non-exchange transaction. But it doesn't really matter so much because all grants fall into roughly 2 categories. What we call and think of as purpose restricted and what we call expenditure driven. So we recognize revenue under GAAP when all of the eligibility requirements for the grant have been met. There are 4 kinds of eligibility requirements that can apply to a particular grant, right, based on the laws, the regulations, grant agreements, terms and conditions, etc. Right. Those that are subject to what we call reimbursement requirements are what we call expenditure-driven grants. So, problem is, not a great term because it's not really about reimbursement per se, so much as it is about the eligibility for the grant revenues being tied to a government having made past tense eligible expenditures. So key aspects of the CSLFRF final rule make it pretty clear that it is an expenditure-driven grant program because the eligibility requirements pretty prominently include the incurrence of eligible expenditures. That's pretty similar to the conclusion that the Governmental Accounting Standards Board reached in their 2020 technical bulletin with regard to governments that received the Coronavirus Relief Fund created by the CARES Act that year. So simply receiving the CSLFRF funds does not trigger revenue recognition in accordance with GAAP. Revenue from expenditure-driven grants cannot be recognized until the eligible expenditures have been incurred and identified. Now, that's not a term we usually hear in accordance with when we talk about grants, right? We just say incurred. But usually, the identification process is part of the claiming for reimbursements. Right? That's when we identify specific expenditures with the grant. Well, because we got this cash in advance, it's sort of its own step. You have to incur eligible expenditures in order to recognize the revenue, and the CSLFRF final rule gave us several categories of eligible spending. One in particular, however, is causing a lot of confusion. So the amount that governments can use for this very broad category of government services, right, is set at either $10 million or at an amount that's calculated using a specific formula to determine the amount of revenue decline that affected the government as during the pandemic emergency. So this is often called lost revenue. The fact that the amount is tied to lost revenue led some governments to kind of confuse and get confused and conclude that the loss of the revenue itself was the applicable eligibility requirement for the category. In fact, it's an expenditure-driven grant. So the expenditures for those eligible government services, that's what makes the government eligible for the grant. So let's take a look at some journal entries. Right. If we receive cash in year one,
So I'm just gonna go over a few more points and highlight some of the things you said in the video. This is basically April of 2022, which is showing you that $224 billion was sent to municipalities, but only 69 billion was spent as of April of 2022, and the funds were sent on May. So it's almost a year. And, only 42% actually started spending money, but 69 out of 224 is what, 30%. So, and Winnebago County is at 0 right now. So it's kind of like the final rule didn't come out till late, so nobody knew really how to do this or what to do with it. So we are at tier 2. Tier 5 basically is 10 million or below, and they were just allowed to say 10 million, no proof, nothing, just write it off. Not write it off, but spend it however you wish to. A lot of them just put it back in their general fund, and it's up to the, basically county workers or executive committee to do that without setting up a separate commission to do that. So in our case, we're at tier 2, which means we could do 10 million, or we have to go through this calculation. Lost revenue is only a calculation. It is nothing more than a mathematical formula of how much you can go and look for expenditures that you have spent and cover the ARPA funds. So basically, there's two big distinctions between this. Calculation is lost revenue. The expenditure driven, which she talked about in the presentation, is these are actual money we spent. And money that you spent that was not from other grants. Because then you get into some fuzzy things if you start using federal other grants instead of just money like really coming from our tax levy and our general fund. So this one is basically, I think this is back to April, but I don't know if I have the date on there, but this shows you that tier 5, the blue, 80% of the people took $10 million and they ran with it. The red is 35% for tier 2, which this is an old slide. So right now we're trying to find more information on, we know the state did it and other counties are doing it. So I'm assuming that red number is going to be way over closer to the blue. Once now the counties actually know what to do with it and the final rule is coming to place. So as I said, we are doing a calculation of specific revenue loss based on the US Treasury's formula. They sent it to us. It's a fact 1315, which we saw earlier in the presentation. Is just a mathematical formula that says, this is how much of the ARPA fund we sent you that you can use on expenditure driven expenses, which is government expenses not funded from some other grant. So this is another case of the interim rule said you could use 4.1%. The final rule changed it to 5.2% in your calculation. So it's just another situation showing, you know, basically they kept modifying and changing. So it was probably good the county didn't do anything right away because they kept changing things on us for the US government and Treasury. When you look at this, you got 2,137 counties, 70% use their expenditures from general government services. Okay, that is what it really is expenditures from general government services. It's not lost revenue. It's expenses that we spent money on that qualify as ARPA, period. So there's that big distinction again I want to make is revenue loss is a calculation to see how much we qualify for. And expenditures are the expenditures that we've already spent money on that we can use the ARPA funds for. So here's the revenue loss calculation. And there's a big difference. There's the calculation, which I'm saying you can use revenue. It goes back and it says you can use your base revenue of 2019. And then based on that revenue, the 138, you multiply by 1.52%. And you come up with a 145, our actual revenue is 139. So as you go there, it basically shows that we have $52 million that we could use as ARPA, but we've only got 33.3. You know, so it's basically showing that we can use all of the 33.3 as expenditures for general services. This, once again, is just highlighting the fact that it's an expenditure-driven grant. It's expenses that the county has spent money that qualify as ARPA. So we can record that, send that to there, and then we basically reclassify the ARPA funds and whatever we want to call it. Not Spirit, but whatever the committee wants to change their name to. And then we can extend the time frame. Otherwise, the time frame is you need to have project done, allocated, encumbered by December 31st of 2024 and spent by 2026, which pretty much takes care of the water treatment plant and several other projects. So it's not we're doing anything fishy. We are trying to do the best for the county, and how we can do that is what I'm showing you here. Once again, this is just highlighting for government services to the extent of that calculation. That calculation said we could use 52 million. That's going to change. I'm working with the auditors. We're back and forth on, except but from 52 to 33, there's no way that we're not going to cover the 33 for lost revenue. So it's basically this. They did come out with a final rule in January, but this is when Fact 1315 came out, was in July. So that shows you it's only really been 6 months since they've really highlighted and shown how to really do this. So we're not really behind. We just were waiting to figure out when the government actually told us what we could do or how we could do it. So now this is the calculation of expenditures. So right now, it's classified this way only. This is all county expenses. This is the sheriff's department. This is well, not DHS. This is anybody that is not getting grants to cover a lot of their expenses. So this is the whole county. The only reason Parkview is split out because they have a proprietary fund. That's why Mike split them out. I was gonna list the 30 or 40 or 60 different departments and say, these are all the expenses from each department. It kind of got kind of messy with the slide, so I didn't do that. Maybe on the 23rd, I'll have more time to put something together that shows you exactly which departments we're using the wages for. In this case, I'm at 33.2 versus 33.3. There are other things besides wages that you can classify as expenditures, which are projects, CIP, broadband, highway projects. Them are two of the easiest ones to classify as ARPA. Oh, go back. If you can see, we actually got 16.6 million on 5/31 of 21. And we got another 16 million on 7/11 of 22. That money is sitting in Associated Bank. It's not like we're transferring money. It's not like we're waiting for money. We have the money. We've had $33 million since July 11th of 22. So it's sitting there. It's not like we're moving money. It's our money right now. And if we don't do something with it and report on it and spend it on projects, federal government's gonna want that. And I don't think that's good for the county. This is the last, I think this is that. This is the reporting part to the federal government. This is CFA. This is where we actually have to go in there, classify the expenditures of what they are, wages and so forth. And the federal government looks at it, reviews it, and okays it. So this is where people say we were doing misallocation or fishy. This is the final report. So that's.
Can that be published? Can that be published? That prepared report and given to us at the board meeting?
What, the CFA or the presentation?
Not the presentation, but the actual accounting of the financial statements of the various departments.
I can answer that. All Supervisor Eisen made that request for me to tell the entire board how we made our January 31st report. I don't believe there is an executive report on the meeting tomorrow. So I'm looking to put together a memo, which I want to have on everybody's desk to show you what we actually reported to the federal government for January 31st. And I can tell you that we included all revenues in that report except for Parkview. We did not record the Parkview labor in that report because I wanted to give Paul and Carol and our team time to look at the revenue to see if there's a way that we could get all this done without touching Parkview at all. It seemed like there was too much confusion around there, so we're gonna look at that.
We're not touching Parkview.
All right.
We are using the sheriff's departments, we're using the finance, the admin, we're using Parkview, we're using the expenditures of the money that was spent, period. That's all that's being done. It's not like money's going here. I mean, if you want to take the money that each department has expenses and send it to them, that's the board's prerogative. I mean, Parkview is no different than the sheriff. So if the sheriff's got $2 million, I guess they can go buy their radio if that's what the board decides they want to do. I mean.
I think part of the concern on the county board floor was the transfer of funds into departments and then they're transferring out to a newly identified account. So what I'm hearing is you're using lost revenue based on their categories to justify the use of funds. Why do we have to transfer into departments instead of just transferring to a different fund that is not named ARPA? Explain that if you would.
Gap and government reporting period, and that Parkview has a proprietary fund. So it's
basically them out, or you still have to do it.
It's an in and an out. It's not like they're getting any it's ARPA revenue, period. It's money we already have in the bank account. So it's a debit and a credit to create whatever fund you want to create now.
Into a separate account, so I think the confusion to the board is you're putting it into a department and then taking.
No, we're
Is
using the
that process necessary?
we're using department's expenses only. We're not putting it into the department and taking it out. We only have to do that with Parkview because they have a proprietary fund.
Okay, maybe that needs to be identified a little clearer.
Morris? Oh. What if, by the resolution, what it looked like, the shift of money from Associated Bank into the general fund and into parking, and then a shift of that money back into whatever ARPA category or spirit fund category we were gonna have and use. But what that looked like was a shell game more than anything else. And why I asked if you could get the financial, the financial listing of all of the lost revenue to justify and freeze that for the moment, so that when the auditors or people want to take a look at what you have, okay, they see what you justified taking of the money for. Go ahead and put it in, if you're gonna put it into the general fund, put it into a separate category of the general fund. So it's just ARPA funds in that category, so it can be delivered to the projects. But you need to have a full list of lost revenue or the departments that have lost revenue. So that it's frozen in time for the period of time that you've gathered it in. And it can be looked at and audited from that standpoint. Yeah.
It's not actually lost, correct?
Right.
It's just physically a mathematical calculation.
Right.
So we have all the information by year end, right? It's our,
We are gathering, we are working with the auditors to make sure that what we are recording is going to make it through the audit, that we don't include something that potentially has a grant. And we have been in
Sure.
communication with all the departments because we're not positive on every grant that they have. So we are working with them to make sure we're not double dipping anywhere. And it's expenditure, it's money that has been spent, it's nothing about lost revenue anymore, it's money that has been spent. That we are going to classify as being spent on ARPA. And basically, it's just an accounting mechanism of when we move it to the general fund and we move it to Parkview. That then we can move it into another, whatever special revenue fund we want to call it. But it needs to be in a special revenue fund. Otherwise, if it's just put into the general fund, we can spend it any way we want. Which is not what we're trying to do when we're trying to be transparent. We're trying to say, this is the special revenue fund, whatever we call it, that this commission is responsible for proposing to the board.
That was my basis for abstaining. It looked like a shell game. And it isn't. You know,
It's kind of, I'm not gonna say it, but it's what the US Treasury has guided us to do. I mean, the federal government does not want the money back. They don't want to go through that. They want us to use it, and they're giving us this lost revenue calculation and expenditures to take care of it, that we have more time to spend it than the 23 months right now.
Mary Ann?
I just was listening to Paul, and when I was going through the materials that he handed out, I think Paul is absolutely right. There was a misnomer when the feds talked about lost revenue, because it makes you think, well, where are we losing the money? But when you're talking about expenditure driven, that's the way to go. Though even in the materials with the video, the YouTube, she talked about lost revenue.
That's the
It's misleading.
calculation, that's
I
a
know.
separate, you have to do this calculation based on US Treasury, and then you have to define your expenditures of how you're going to reclassify. Or how you spent ARPA.
Could this
Yes.
be presented? I think this should be presented to the board as a whole, because it feels like some get it, but it feels like a lot have no clue and it. And like we made up this word lost revenue, or I understand the misconception that it looks not transparent, but it is a general ledger. It feels like the PPP money. It wasn't future, it was past, what we had already spent on staffing. And nonprofits were doing that too. We can't double dip with grant money and such, so it makes sense in a nonprofit accounting world.
I paid my taxes. There is my lost revenue there.
Yes, it can be presented to the board. I don't know when you're talking about, but possibly, yes, if they come up with something that can be.
Feels like that might be helpful, just to, that it was a great explanation of this whole process, that it's not something you or we made up, that that's how we're told to do it.
Yes, I would echo some of that same sentiment that there is some education that needs to be done. Paul, I guess my question is, you said the presentation that you gave us from April, and obviously this is a moving target. Now, a lot of the municipalities have spent that money. I'm thinking that you found whatever you had as the latest and greatest presentation and figures, right? We know April, there are a lot of counties and cities didn't spend this money, but
Right.
by December, a lot of them spent that.
I've reached out to the GFOA to see if they have any updates on this presentation, to see if they have any more. Information on that, and Ethan, I know, has been looking at some of the stuff as far as NACO and whether or not which county has done what, who's doing this, but 80% back in April, that was a tier 5. I mean, I'm sure that's probably 100% right now, and I'm not sure where the tier 2s are. But we can try to find that before the hopefully February 23rd board meeting.
Sure, I guess that would be my next ask, is that, that be presented as well, like, what did this county spend it on, what did, what did this town, spend it on, so we have some idea of that.
Well, they might not have spent it yet.
Sure, or
They
allocated or.
allocated
Sure.
it based on the expenditure driven grant, and they might still be going through the same process that we're gonna get to, is where do we spend it and what projects do we spend it on, but all we're really trying to do, and all I think the US Treasury is doing, is they realized money wasn't being spent, and they didn't want to have to take it back because it would be egg on their face, so they're extending the amount of time you have to spend it.
Since we're doing a reset, the money is segregated in Associated Bank in a separate account. We intend to spend every dime of our 33.6 million on ARPA qualifying projects. What do we care about clawbacks and lost revenues and ins and outs? I mean, we're gonna go forward the way they told us to go forward, follow all the rules, and the money's already segregated. So is there a reason to go with this hours of mess of in and out accounting?
Because if you don't classify it and report it as being spent under ARPA,
In
then
2
you need
years,
to then spend it under ARPA and have
Well-
it done by the 24th.
which is what we intend to do.
Right.
What we're trying to do is just take the money on an extended period of time rather than chop ourselves off at 2024.
But we still, we still could do one of those trust fund allocations a year from now and move $10 million into the water management preservation fund.
Right.
Following all the ARPA rules. And again, not worry about all the arguing that's been occurred through this clawback and in and out stuff.
My argument to that is I want to make our transparency to the community easy instead of pointing to 5 different accounts. I'd like to make it easy to say there is one resiliency spirit fund, whatever you want to call it. Here's our amount, and this is how we allocated the money to improve our community, whether it be land and water, whether it be helping the United Way 11 facility or a Rock the Block grant or whatever it is, to show people that instead of having all these different pools.
But the pool is ARPA and it's all segregated. And we follow all the ARPA rules. So what's the confusion?
I mean, the confusion is the timetable. I mean, that's the crisis of why I think they came up with the US Treasury came up with the final rule is to allow you to spend the ARPA funds on just like PPP. You know, it's from past expenditures. You still have them, you put them in a special revenue fund, and then we start tracking all the projects within that special revenue fund going forward. Whether it's 2 years or 5 years or 6 years, the county has the money to take the time to be able to fund multi-year projects.
Could we do what you're talking about today, a year from now? The reason to do it. I mean, we're gonna be spending money throughout the year on our ARPA requests. So we've got $15 million left, you know, February of 2024. Could we then do our clawback reallocation of expenditures that we?
I mean, you can do whatever
I mean,
the board wants to do.
It seems like all the worry
I'm
is that we're.
I mean,
we're doing.
My opinion, for what it matters is to do it, report it, and move forward. Not do half and half. I mean, otherwise, we're gonna be back into the discussion in another year with what are we doing when we end up with new board members or whatever. So my opinion is if we can get this done, we do it. And we move forward into getting projects for the community and helping the county. But that's just, I've only been here 2.5 months, so.
It's a staff recommendation and it's.
I just want to clarify. So the key is to have a special revenue account. And once you have that and put the ARPA money in it, then it allows you to go until the end of 26. Is
No,
that correct?
No. ARPA, you have to have it encumbered or spent. You have to have it encumbered or defined by 2024 and spent by 2026. We could take the ARPA funds and do this expenditure driven grant and based on the expenditures, move it all into the general fund and leave it there. And then spend however we want without board approval. The reason to move it into the special revenue account is this commission and the board are making decisions on how that money is being spent. That's the only reason of doing that is being more transparent and more defined and having the board make them decisions, not
Right.
the administration.
I have a question. Now, when you say that, how can you just go ahead and do that without board approval?
I don't think that's what he meant. I think he meant as
We
through the
can't.
budget.
You can't.
Yeah, right.
No, you can, but that would be what some counties have probably done is moved it all in general fund and then it just.
The easiest thing.
No, you can't do it without board approval. I'm learning that.
We could have replaced this revenue and just simply paid off all our debt and called it a day.
No.
I don't think that, well, no, we could have replaced the revenue. And then with that money that went to the general fund,
Yeah,
we could have paid off all our debt.
yeah.
And I don't think that that would be the best interest in increasing resiliency in our county. So just not something I wanted to have this process. When we looked at it, the direction was, how do we do this to make the reporting end easier so we can focus on the other large projects we have going on in the county and make sure this money is spent in the best way to increase resiliency in Winnebago County. Whether that be a 15 to 20 year land and water program or making it easier for us to give grants to food pantries so they can weather the storm or whoever else it is. And that's what this commission can do. I wanted this commission to have the freedom to say, how can we make our community the best it possibly can, the strongest it possibly can with this money.
Any other questions of Paul?
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Bob.
I'm sure you'll be back.
Yeah.
Now,
You know, I look at this committee and the time we spent on it, yet we're expecting to walk into a board meeting. Try to convince those people that we know what we're doing. That's no small act to do it, because we've got people in that board who did pick the past and wordsmith it and everything else. So don't put a lot on the agenda for that language.
And I would say, at that meeting, and we'd like to get some of these presentations on, make sure that you are on this commission and you are on the board, please speak up.
Yeah.
Yep,
You gotta sell it.
yes,
Ask the board members to do their homework first
Yeah.
before coming and just making.
discussion of possible action regarding authorizing grants from spirit funds, municipalities within Winnebago County.
On your own.
I think you're looking at the wrong agenda.
yeah. All right,
You're on 7. I
Right,
believe.
review and discussion of proposed timeline of the ARPA strategy and outcome commission.
all right, Ethan, can you bring this up? So Tom, you mind if I start this?
Yeah.
All right,
So
so,
you're gonna have a date, that's the only thing I want to know.
yeah, a couple of them.
All right, the only thing that I want to interfere on is we had picked February 23rd. That's our clerk's last day, and I don't think any of us want to miss out on the party that
That's a new one.
that she's having, and so there'd be nobody coming from down there to the clerk work either, so that would be the only thing if we have to change that, but
So I'm gonna have to move that to a day later or
Okay.
earlier.
fine.
Okay, yeah. So Tom and I got together and we kind of discussed the best way to kind of reset this and going forward. And these were some dates that we talked about, some items that we talked about, how we move forward on this. So I'm gonna cover the February 6th real quick. These are the things we're going over today. And Tom, I'm thankful that you fought for this meeting because I think it was needed to kind of show the process of how we want to reset. So we talked about those 3 things on there and we got to see the presentation of ARPA funds that I think we're going to get to the full board so everybody can see. Hopefully, everybody watches this meeting and can see that ahead of time, but we'll definitely make sure that information is given. But I do want to talk about February 23 and I'm gonna hand this over for a second. So I've had Ethan's been working with 2 members of the health department, Ashley Romlo and Heidi Keating, who are very good at what they do to kind of help us staff this. So I think they're gonna give us that they've been working on some stuff for the February 23rd ARPA commission meeting, which will probably be the 22nd or the 24th. We're here. Ethan, do you mind talking a little bit about the things that we're going to be going over?
Yeah, so much of that facilitation is kind of a reset on, for the public's knowledge, some of the things that spreadsheet that the commission's looked at. Some of those things is to come back and kind of put some goals and outcomes together and kind of a way forward to present to the board, how to proceed. So they will have facilitators come in to kind of help walk through that and make sure that the town's thing is cleaned up. It's exactly how the commission wants it to go. Everything is kind of buttoned up and moved forward. There's projects that maybe if you want outdoor recreation projects or things like that, there's kind of a facilitation of what types of projects would you like to see. So then in March or April, whenever we go to full board, there's not an argument about do the towns have to fill out a piece of paper or not fill out a piece of paper. That will all get taken care of through your next several meetings. So these are the things that we want. These are the types of projects we want to see invested in. These are the types of organizations we want to see invested in. And you kind of move forward with a single document that we can give the board and the public in an easy to understand way. So the goal is to kind of make sure that all of the work that you've done kind of gets organized in a way that is more formalized and ready in a form that can go to the full county board.
That is the 23rd.
Well,
Not sure what
this is the initial, yeah, when the chairs sat down, this is the initial timeline they set out. But yeah, these are not set in stone.
Great. The 23rd, the only thing is that Sue retires after 40-some years, that I think we owe it to her to give her day.
Clerk Harper is kind of a big deal.
Right, and we don't want to miss a piece of cake. either, do we? Tom?
If I remember right, in our previous meetings, we had this set up into 3 different pots of money. And that's being accounted.
That's what they'll bring and they'll go through and you'll put extra definitions down. Yep,
No more needed.
Yep.
More needed, you got it covered.
yep.
And I think the February 28th board meeting, when we get to that, that is when we're gonna do a presentation. I think we're gonna go over a lot of stuff that Paul just went over. A lot of showing the homework, a lot of the explaining stuff. I do not intend to bring any resolutions forward on that 20th meeting. Tom, I think that's what we talked about. So in March, what we're gonna do is we will revisit the resolution we did in October with maybe some new calculations that get us out of 2021, that may get us out of Parkview. So I'm gonna let Paul do his homework on that, and we will try another kick at a can of starting up another fund. I hate to say the word spirit because it turned into a ghost talk. I think resiliency or something like that, don't care what it's called. The auditors just didn't want us to call it the ARPA fund. So we'll work on that, and I will own that mistake. I thought spirit of ARPA would be, it had great intentions, but I can see how the communication went south.
Turned into the ghost.
Yes, right.
Excuse me, I think my memory of why they didn't want us to use the ARPA is that we were going to face deadlines very, very quickly. We don't have that problem right now. So you could safely call it ARPA and not have any confusion.
Right.
Is that possible?
The auditors might.
I would say no,
No,
if we do actually vote to have the expenditures that we classify using the ARPA funds, ARPA's dead.
How about ARPA reset?
John don't like mine.
Yeah,
I came up with ARPA.
yeah. So,
Winnebago recover,
no, I think it's important that we call it something
you know, it's.
different. Yep, and it's not going to be spirit. It'll most likely be resiliency or whatever recovery fund, whatever we decide on. And I think that's, it's important that we do that, to make sure that the transparency, otherwise this commission technically doesn't have a job. Because the ARPA money is allocated. So I want to make sure that this resolution, that we still have that transparency and oversight over this money. This is the opposite of nefarious. If I wanted to be nefarious, then I just let the other vote go and been done with it. And it's me trying to bring things forward to make things right. All right,
Anything else, Ethan?
Nope.
see what staff comes up with.
Can you put that on an email or something to all this?
Once you set the next meeting dates, I'll do that.
Okay.
We'll get that set. We'll have to look to see if there's any other meetings. I know, we got that IBD out there. I know you're that I'm on that.
So doodle. It's all over the place, right?
Yeah, there's not a lot of dates yet.
The
We'll get
timing,
that out as soon as we can.
And what was
I'm
it?
saying the timing is okay on public notice for the next county board meeting?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, we
I
can,
don't
we
know how
can.
that works.
Yes, yes, the timing will be fine for that. And again, I'd like to encourage any member of this commission, citizen appointments as well. If you guys have any questions or anything that you'd like to see to work on or something that you want staff to do, please reach out to myself, reach out to Paul, reach out to Ethan. We will get you in contact with staff to help get you numbers and things that you want to see.
Does 1 o'clock still work good for everyone, or do they prefer earlier, later? 7:30 in the morning?
Thank you.
So 1 o'clock then?
1 o'clock.
Whatever dates.
Oh.
We just got
Well, yeah,
another one out.
not the 23rd, right?
No, I don't think so, no.
We'll have to take
Well,
a
on
look
my
at,
calendar, so give me a date.
we'll have to look at the
We'll get it out
22nd.
as quick as we can.
Okay.
22nd, we can give Sue one last kick of the can, or. What is the 22nd? Is
You know what you
that
told me?
For Wednesday.
is that what you done? So Tom, we gotta go one past 24th?
Whatever, the 22nd.
Right.
22nd.
Haven't you called this?
That's IDB.
22nd.
That's how usually is all used, so.
Those are my choices. You can hear.
But IDB on
9
Friday.
o'clock.
If you want.
Yeah.
Just get what you did.
Yeah, all day.
Join me.
Yeah, Tom's buying lunch on the 22nd.
I just have a comment that, I heard the great presentation, understand the moving pieces a little bit better than I did before. To me, this comes down to two things. The government allows us to spend, they're giving us some money and they gave us a formula on how to calculate how much money it is. We don't have control over that. They did. They gave us the money. Here's what we've got to spend. The second part is that they've got some rules when you have to spend it by. So this commission comes up, determines what it's going to be spent on. And by doing that before the end of 24, we get to actually push some of those, the actual cash distribution out for a couple of years. But it's really just two moving pieces. They gave us a formula, we calculated 33 point whatever. And then this group says, okay, here's what we collectively think we should spend it on. And we just have to make those decisions and commit to expend that by the end of 24. And it all has to be distributed by the end of 26.
I think we're doing what we can to avoid the 24, 26 timeline.
We have to do the 24.
No, if we report it as expenditure.
Well, that's what I'm, yeah,
Then there is no timeline.
Then there is
It's-
no
it's-
26.
yeah, we
The
expect,
timeline has been met by reporting the expenditure.
yeah, okay,
Then that is now a new special revenue fund with no timeline.
okay.
Which gives a lot more flexibility.
Just a quick question too. Could you update the dollar amount? Because we've got 6 months worth of interest in that accrued dedicated account.
I brought that up.
So there should be $600,000 to $800,000 of interest earnings in that segregated account.
34 what?
I know that's-
34 million.
I'm just, I mean, but it's 3% of 33 million is $1 million a year.
Now,
So
you think we're affording sewer for his retirement gift? No,
That's the good side.
yeah, we will definitely look into that.
give me an update by
Yep.
the 23rd.
Mr. Chair, are we gonna set dates? Now,
We'll have to look at after the 23rd, we'll have to see if there's any other meetings and then we'll get it to you, right, or who's ever gonna send this out right afterwards.
so we want to target the 22nd.
Well, we can target the 22nd, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I've got something on.
It's gonna be a long
I'm not
meeting.
saying I couldn't make it.
If we.
We don't want it on Friday.
Second, can we do 1:30 or 1:15?
Yeah, we can do.
Will you be able to be here by 1:15, 22nd?
Yes. However long as long as Mott's lets me buzz from Oshkosh Court to here real fast.
Let's follow.
Yeah. Do 1:30. Wow, me.
Yeah.
I'm retired. but-
So I'll send it down, and if anybody has issues, just let me know that, and then. Mr. Galloway, you're gone the 9th, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
We can move that over if we do.
Yep. Sure can.
That would get everybody here if we went with the 10th. We'll be back.
No, I won't be back till the 15th. 2-week vacation.
Gee.
Oh,
Thanks.
So tentatively, we are the 22nd day of February at 1:30.
Do you want 1:30?
That way we know everybody can
That would
make
be-
it here.
Yep, 1:30.
1:30.
The 2nd and the 9th.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, I did look at the calendar for the county board. We have a county board meeting on the 28th.
That's what I saw,
Not the 21st.
No.
because if there's an election on the 21st.
Oh, that's what, thank you.
Is it for the 28th?
Yeah, the 28th, it's, yeah, there's the third Tuesday, is the primary day, so we can never have a board meeting on election day, right, Sue?
We don't. but great.
So I will release that.
Election, he didn't have it down to the 28th for our,
Oh,
for the county board meeting.
Are you open for motion? to adjourn?
I certainly am.
Second.
Favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, say nay. Thank you all.
I want to thank Mary Ann for her expertise today. I really appreciate it.
Thank
you.
so you wanna go along? We can do a vote on it?
Yeah, on the motion.
With unanimous,
It was unanimous, all right.
right?
Oh,
Oh,
all voted yes.
Good meeting.
Yep, yep, yep.
Things work.
Yeah.
That was really good. That was some of that.
You really know. That's, I forget. It's based on COVID errors, ARPA, it's the whole big. So I forget what it stands for. And then